today's discussion is probably going to be one of those ones that you're like, oh, dude, here we go. We're going to learn about addiction again. If you've never been to rehab, maybe this is all new information to you. And hopefully, if you have and you've heard these type of discussions before, hopefully I can introduce you to some new information. My name is Jimmy. I'm a certified alcohol and drug counselor. I am a person in long-term recovery. And I set alarms to manage my time so I don't, miss out on places that I have to be. So good to know I'm in the right place at the right time. Now, I today am going to assume, I'm just assuming, I don't really know you guys, you don't know me, but I'm going to assume that if you ended up in this room, you have a problem with drugs and alcohol. All right, at least one or the other. Now, to the degree of which, how unmanageable or how powerless you are over alcohol, that's the type of discussion that's just going to be held as we continue to go on. But the main thing we want to do today is admit, and for the next couple classes, is to admit, to confess to be true that addiction or alcohol or drugs has brought me to the point that I am here today. And possibly alcohol has brought me to the point of many other areas of unmanageability in my life. Maybe that relationship problem has something to do with addiction. Maybe the job problem has something to do with addiction, the health problem, the this and that. Like, if we could get a common denominator amongst all of our problems, we have all come to believe that drugs or alcohol addiction is at the foundation of these problems. It has kept us trapped in a cycle of, decay that leads to nothing more than decay in our spirit, our mental, our emotional, and our physical being. And a lot of what we're going to talk about is that process of decay. How does one begin to decay from drugs and alcohol? In order to get started, we're going to get into a little bit of literature. We're going to talk about addiction. How do we end up here? And that's kind of where I'm going to start the discussion today. You may have heard me talk about this 2 weeks ago. So this is going to be maybe just a brief summary on spiritual awakenings of how does somebody come to even admit that they are an addict, right? Like, how do you get someone to a point of saying, yes, I'm an addict. Yes, I'm an alcoholic. Well, generally, it starts off with excessive drinking or using patterns. Too much, too often, okay? And as a result of using, let me pull up my handy dandy whiteboard. We are excessive drinking / using. This is too much, too often. And maybe at first we are deciding to do this. Maybe at first we're using for some reason. Pretty much this leads to a belief system. And the belief is that perhaps it's not that bad. Belief, not that bad. I can handle it. It's okay. No big deal. I'm an adult. Many different things we may say to ourselves that cause us to believe that although you may think that my drinking pattern is too much, too often, whatever the case may be, I don't believe that. Why don't I believe that? Because I can handle it. Because I'm 21, it's okay. Because I'm home and I'm drinking. I'm not out drinking and driving. I'm at home drinking. It's not that big of a deal. I'm an adult. I'm not doing meth. I'm fucking drinking alcohol. It's not that bad. And all this belief or this justification or this rationalization does is leads us to continue to make more decisions. And what are we deciding to do? We're deciding to do what we've been doing, which is this. So, as a result of our belief system, we continuously decide to use too much, too often, excessively. And as a result of those decisions, we have some problems occurring. What are some of those problems? Maybe job loss, arrests, blackout, maybe real basic stuff like that, blackout, maybe tremors at some point. Okay. And the goal is to begin maintaining and associating these problems with our excessive drinking. But when we have these problems as a result of our drinking, we don't believe that drinking is the problem because it's not that bad. We revert back to our aspects of denial. Not that bad. I can handle this. We can get out of this situation. And what we end up doing is making the decision to continue to use. Now, this is where the unmanageability occurs because we're deciding to use. And just because we're deciding to use and I think I can handle it and I believe it's okay, just because I believe those things does not mean they are true. So just because the addict believes it's not that bad, believes they're hurting themselves only, believes in all these things, does not mean that that's actually true. And as a result of them making the decision to continue to drink too much on a foundation of this belief, they fail to meet the standards of people, places, and things. So what ends up happening is we use too much too often in different, ready? This decision is in different circumstances in response to different moods and relationships. Okay. So we begin to use too much too often in response to different circumstances. So maybe the circumstance isn't calling for excessive drinking. Maybe the event that we're at does not call for these excessive drinking patterns, but we end up doing it anyways. End up drinking in response to these circumstances that don't call for it. We end up drinking in response to moods that may not call for it. So now again, maybe these situations warrant, like maybe society wise, culturally wise, these circumstances, moods, and relationships do in fact co-sign alcohol, right? Like a wedding, for instance. Alcohol is present, a sporting event, right? Some of these events may glorify excessive drinking, but the problem is we may be excessively drinking past what is acceptable drinking at this time. And as a result of continuously failing to meet these standards, we end up drinking too much too often in response to circumstances, moods, and relations. Now, if you are constantly drinking during all of these circumstances, moods, and relationships, what's going to end up happening is you are going to develop the mental and moral quality distinctive to an alcoholic. So, you know who thinks it's right to drink at a 3-year-old birthday party? An alcoholic. You know who would think it's okay to use this much and defend it, right? Like it's not only is the addict drinking too much too often, but we are defending the excessive drinking pattern. Okay. And when you have someone defending that, they are establishing and they are standing behind the drug. You're defending a drug, like a relationship, I wish you wouldn't drink. No, drinking's not the problem. You're defending the problem. That's what is happening in that exact moment. And who defends like alcohol against their loved ones? An alcoholic, dude. In my opinion. Now, I'm not going to sit here and call a person defending their alcoholic beverage every night an alcoholic. That's their job to come to that realization and admit it. You know, it is the alcoholic's job to confess this to be true. I can't. It's like you can't force someone into you can't force someone into a state of mind that is not existent in them. Does that make sense? Right? Like I'm assuming an addict like if I say something like just stop using, just get sober, I'm assuming they know how to do that. You see what I'm saying? It's like maybe they actually don't know how to do that. Like in order for an addict to get sober, they must at first learn how to get sober. How the fuck do I do that? If I knew how to do that, maybe I wouldn't be in this situation. So it's like an addict needs treatment. They need to be shown this way. They need to be introduced to recovery. But to maintain the recovery that they establish as a result of that introduction, they have to completely surrender to it. So they must completely turn everything over to it to continue that journey. Now, as the addict continues on this journey that we are going down, as they defend the alcohol, they have this mental and moral quality of an alcoholic or an addict. As a result of having and thinking this way, they tend to fail to meet standards. And who sets these standards, right? These standards set in marriages, work, culture, society, right? Like, for instance, if you fail to meet the standards of what is needed to drive safely, then you get a DUI. Okay. If you fail to meet what it takes to get into a marriage, you lose it. Same thing with a job and everything else. So, as a result of having and establishing, and you could even go through, how does someone start to think that these things are right? How does someone develop this mental and moral quality? How does someone think that it's not that bad, they can handle it? It's as a result of handling it. Like they're going through the experience of drinking a handle and nothing happens. They're excessively drinking, and not every, I mean, if you're excessively drinking every single day, there are going to be many days scattered in there where no problems happen. So when you have a majority of an alcoholic's career on a foundation of nothing goes wrong, there's never, I've had no problem with my drinking up until this last year. You know what I mean? It's like, if they have a whole history of drinking going great for them, it's not like their thinking is going to immediately adjust, And that's perhaps how somebody starts to think it's okay. It's not that big of a deal. I've been drinking for 20 years. Haven't had any problems until this last year. So I'm not like these other people. And those belief systems keep them, like, literally, if you fail to understand any part of this, you end up right back here. So if someone does not identify that this drinking pattern has caused this mental and moral quality, they're going to continue to drink. If they don't see that they're failing to meet these standards in these areas of life, they are going to continue to drink. Like, this is going to continue the process. And then what happens is it gets to a point where, because we fail to meet, like, I really wish you got shit-faced last night. What the hell, honey? You embarrassed me so much. This is where the amends start, right? And we start to try to make some minor changes to make it fairer, more accurate, or more up to date. So as a result of us getting these problems, right? Like, say you have a problem in your marriage, you fail to meet the standard of your marriage, and they say something like, I need you to stop drinking. And we decide to make these minor changes, like, you're right, I'm going to come right home. I'm going to share my money with you. I'm going to do this, honey. That's what's going to happen. None of these solutions are, I'm going to stop drinking forever. You know what I mean? And even in the solution being, I'm going to stop drinking forever, the minor changes that we make to fulfill that amends behaviorally are not succeeded. So, what do you see? Of course, you see people going right back to drinking excessively. And then they end up living this life day after day after day, blaming everything other than the alcohol, coming to believe that it ain't me, it's her, it's that shit job, it's this, it's that, blaming and pushing it off and denying and denying and denying. And this goes on day after. How many days does this go on for? Weeks, months, years? I don't know. You know? But I will tell you that the whole time we are living this life, we are damaging our bodies, we're damaging our minds, we're generating new neurological pathways on a foundation of learned helplessness, avoiding emotion, manipulation, etc., etc. And I mean, to what degree is this happening? I don't know. I mean, people could probably sit here and say, well, I'm an alcoholic. I never manipulated. You fucking liar, dude. You're a fucking liar. You are unable to see the reality of your disease if you cannot see similarities rather than differences in the things that are discussed in this rehab. You know, it's like the best thing you can do is focus on how I am close to this instead of how far away I am from it. So what ends up happening is people start to question. They start to ask questions. They start to think real deep about this. And I'll tell you, why does it take someone in active addiction so long to get the picture, dude? Bro, you're so focused on the getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. When are you going to have time to fucking evaluate your life, dude? I mean, you're so focused. We become so focused on the getting and using and finding alcohol or drugs that it's a 24/7 fucking job some of the time for some of us. When am I going to have time to say, yeah, man, like maybe these drugs are the problem? Bro, you know when you're going to think that? When you are either one at your extreme bottom where there's no chance in getting high, or when you're at your extreme top and you're like high, you're good, there's nothing going on, no problems, and then the freedom comes. It's like North Korea, right? Like, consider North Korea is a starving country. The leader of North Korea is intentionally depriving their country of food, because if they're thinking about food, they're not going to think about rebelling. You follow me? So if you're thinking about getting more alcohol, when are you going to think about like changing your life, doing things the right way? If we're only constantly thinking about drugs and alcohol. And it leads to prayer and meditation. And usually we're like, how do I get out? What's wrong with me? Why am I so different? How come I fucked up my whole life and everybody else is so much better? And I don't understand this. God, please. I'll do anything. I just want to be sober. Help me. And then all of a sudden comes a spiritual awakening. And as a result of getting high or drunk every day, too much, too often, it gets to a point where all of a sudden we are like, oh my God, bro, I'm an addict. I'm a fucking alcoholic. They're right. That's now, just because someone identifies themselves as an addict or alcoholic does not mean they change. You see what I'm saying? Like, I knew I was an addict or an alcoholic, and I stayed out there for years trying to manage addiction and life. And back then, if you were to ask me, I'd say I did a really good fucking job at it too. Anybody in here ever call themselves a functioning alcoholic, a functioning addict? You follow what I'm saying? All that means is your shit hasn't blown up yet. That's all that means. Someone who is a functioning alcoholic is just surviving at achieving their aims every day, which is getting high every day. So the person who is a functioning alcoholic is surviving at managing life and addiction. But I mean, your addiction does not have to blow up for an addiction, for a drug or alcohol related problem to happen. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to get a DUI. You don't have to fuck up your driving to get a DUI. You could be perfect drinking and driving type of person, but you get rear ended and now the cops are involved. That's something that's totally out of your hands. That had I not been drinking, maybe I would have power and an ability to manage this situation. So we get to a point where, I mean, even though we've admitted that we were an addict or an alcoholic, the addiction gets to a point where we can no longer manage it. It's either my life has become so unmanageable, I have to clean it up, or if I don't fix this, shit is going to get really, really bad, right? And that is ultimately what ends up people here. That is what gets people to some sort of recovery like this, is recognizing that we're an addict, generally attempting to get sober on our own with failed attempts that lead to more unmanageability, which leads us to a place like this, where in order to be in a place like this, you must do a first step. It is a requirement for everybody in this room to have had admitted that they were an addict in order to get in here, to confess addiction to be true in their lives. Now, if someone is confessing addiction, they're also confessing a lot of other things that come along with that, right? Which is why we avoid it for so long. Because if I tell you that I'm an addict, then you are going to know that perhaps I failed to meet some standards, right? Maybe if I tell you that I'm an addict, you may think I think a certain way, or you may think that I can't handle circumstances, or my relationships are fucked up, or you may think that I'm just some guy who's homeless on the side of the road. You don't understand? I can handle it. It's okay. I'm not that bad yet. You're not what bad yet? You're not what bad yet? We have to wait until you fucking kill somebody in a drinking and driving accident before we decide to get you help with your addiction? We have to wait for you to fucking ruin everything before we get you help? Is that how bad it has to be before we decide to change our lives? I don't think it has to be that bad. I don't think we have to sit around and say, well, they're not that bad yet. They're not like, slumped over in the corner. They don't have 4 DUIs. You know what I mean? It's like, bro, they don't have to get to that point to fix the problem. Like, if your tire has a leak, you can go fill that motherfucker with air. You don't got to wait for it to blow out and you're fucking stuck on the side of the road. It's like, you can fix these problems proactively. Now, what are we? It's one thing to just admit that I'm an addict. It's another thing to admit powerlessness over our addiction and that our lives had become unmanageable. Those are two things, and you're kind of hard pressed to admit one and not the other. So the goal is to try to admit both of those. And today we're going to try to mainly focus on, what am I admitting? I'm admitting that I'm an addict. So what does it mean to struggle with addiction and understand addiction recovery and so on and so forth? Well, I have gotten to where I am as a result of drinking too much, too often. when someone, a human being, drinks too much, too often, what are some common things that happen? These are some of the things that we're going to discuss. And in addition to that, the powerlessness over our addiction with the physical aspect, the mental aspect, the spiritual aspect, etc., etc. So what let me get into some of this literature. I'll move you over to my screen here. Step one, we admitted we are powerless over our addiction and that our lives have become unmanageable. A first of anything is a beginning, and so it is with this. The first step is the beginning of the recovery process. The healing starts here. We can't go any further until we do this work. Some members feel their way through the first step by intuition. Others choose to do one in a more systematic fashion. Our reason for formally working this step will vary from member to member. It may be that we're new to recovery and we just fought a long and exhausting battle with drugs. It may be that we've been around a while, absent from drugs, but we discovered that our disease has become active in some other area of our lives, forcing us to face our powerlessness and unmanageability of our lives once again. Not every act of growth is motivated by pain. It may just be time to cycle through the steps again, thus beginning the next stage of our never-ending journey. Excuse me. Now, admitting powerlessness is not like something that you do once and then you never do again. You may find yourself having to admit powerlessness multiple times a day, like throughout the entire day. I mean, that is the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. I am powerless over these things that I cannot change. The courage to change the things that I can. Well, since I'm powerless over that, what can I fix? What can't I fix? What can I control? What can't I control? And in order to know that better and better and better and be more efficient and faster at making that decision requires experience and the wisdom to know the difference. The actual experience of going through and learning what works and what doesn't work. Some of us find a measure of comfort in realizing that a disease, not a moral failing, has caused us to reach this bottom. So it's a disease. A lot of people think they're a piece of shit. They're a scumbag. I'm such an idiot. I should have known better. I fucked up. It's like, yo, you have a disease, which means it's diagnosable and treatable. So it's not a moral failing. You don't think that what you were doing was right. You were just unable to do the right thing as a result of addiction. Others really don't care what the cause has been. We just want out. Whatever the cause, it's time to do some work, to engage in some concrete activity that'll help us figure out more freedom from our addiction, whatever shape it's currently taking. Our hope is to internalize the principles of step one, deepen our surrender, and make acceptance, humility, willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness a fundamental part of who we are. Fundamental part of who we are. Like, people assume that we are this. First, we must arrive at a point of surrender. There are many different ways to do this. For some of us, the road we traveled to getting to the first step was more than enough to convince us that unconditional surrender was our only opinion. Others start this process even though we're not entirely convinced that we're addicts or that we really hit our bottom. And that's totally cool. Like, for you to get here, you had to have surrendered. You had to have ceased fighting against some authority, whether it's the police, family. They're like, you need to go to rehab, and you stopped fighting and you said, fine, whatever. Now, whether you believe you're an addict or not, you ended up in a place where addicts are. So, it's like, there's no use in you looking around being like, damn, all these motherfuckers are addicts and alcoholics. I'm not like that. Like, you have to be like that in order to get here. Dude, that is a form of denial if you have come to believe that you are not an addict and you're in a rehab. Like that don't happen. Only in working the first step do we truly come to realize that we are addicts, that we've hit bottom, and that we must surrender. If you don't compare your addiction to anyone else's, if you only compare your addiction to your own in the current state it is in today versus where it was earlier in life, this is the worst it's ever been. It has never been this bad. Maybe what got you to admit what the bottom was back then may have been worse, but where everything else is right now is probably the worst it's ever been. We must become abstinent, whatever it takes, before we begin this. It's primarily about looking at the effects of the addiction in our lives. In order to do that, we have to get clean. If we've been clean a while, this is about our powerlessness over some behavior that made our lives unmanageable. We need to find a way to stop the behavior so that our surrender isn't clouded by acting out. So now that's like the purpose of why we do this work. Why do we have these discussions, et cetera, et cetera? Now we're moving into the actual disease of addiction. What is the disease of addiction? What does it mean? So on and so forth. What makes us addicts is the disease of addiction, not the drugs, not our behavior, but our disease. There is something within us that makes us unable to control our use of drugs and alcohol. The same something also makes us prone to obsession and compulsion in other areas of our lives. How can we tell when our disease is active? When we become trapped in obsessive, compulsive, self-centered routines and endless loops that lead nowhere but to physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional decay. Now, what can we be addicted to? So, what can people be addicted to? Do you guys have any idea about that? What was that? I'm sorry. Anything. Shopping. Alcohol. Cigarettes. Nicotine. What was it? Work? Workaholic.
Caffeine.
What was it?
Caffeine.
Caffeine. They hear Xanax? But yeah. Xanax, painkillers. If I can be addicted to anything, can I be addicted to people? Sex, emotions, gambling. Nail biting, cutting, bulimia, anorexia, which is anorexia is the deadliest mental health disease out there. Hoarding, is hoarding an addiction?
Yeah.
You seen people eat mattresses? It's on an episode of My Strange Addiction.
Yeah, so anorexia is gluttony of food.
Overeating. Good. Exercise? I like you said overeating because that's mine. I'm an overeater. I've also been bulimic before. I guess I'm recovering from bulimia.
What's the difference between bulimia and anorexia?
Bulimia is when they eat, so they binge eat, and then they throw up. Anorexia is like no eating.
Okay.
Exercise. What else? Sugar. Addicted to.
Some people are addicted to adrenaline rushes.
Adrenaline. Yep. Adrenaline junkies. speeding, fucking jumping out of airplanes and shit like that.
I like drifting.
What is it? Was it?
I said I like jumping out of airplanes.
Yeah, I've never done that shit. That would be fucking crazy. I don't know about that.
Fits and be addicted to it. Well, I guess drugs.
Yeah, that would be crazy. I would like to do it, but not today. What else can people be addicted to their cell phone?
Sure.
Social media, video games.
Can people be addicted to gossip because some people live for that?
Gossip?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would call it maybe attention. Like the attention they get from gossiping. I feel like people get addicted to attention.
Stealing.
Oh, kleptomaniac. I can't not steal. Wow. That's a lot of addictions right there, huh? Shopping, alcohol, cigarettes, nicotine, work, caffeine, pills, painkillers, people, sex, emotions, gambling, nail biting, cutting, bulimia, anorexia, hoarding, eating mattresses, overeating, exercise, sugar, adrenaline, phone, social media, video games, gossip, attention, stealing. Did we miss any?
So I plastic surgery. I don't know what that would be classified under. Body modifications. Yeah.
Body modification. Wow, that's a good thing to call it. What about negative self-talk? What about okay, so what is one thing, if these all have something in common, what makes them an addiction? What does addiction mean to you that would categorize all of these things?
Knowing that they're harmful, but you can't stop. You like the feeling of it enough that you would go to any length knowing the hazards and dangers of it.
Knowing it's harmful but still doing it. You said the feeling too. I'm gonna put the feeling up there. The euphoria, right? Like gossip, right? People probably like the feeling of other people going, "Oh my God, dude, that's crazy. What happened next?" Probably because they have nothing going on in their own life exciting to talk about.
Or they're so miserable that they want to find faults in other people.
Right. And it's and then you take that idea and apply it to a drug though, right? I don't like the feeling that I'm in, so I use this to facilitate a feeling that is better than what I have currently. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So gossip is I'm going to talk about somebody else's life to make mine better, in however way that may work, whether it's having something to do or comparing or whatever. It's the same thing with drugs. It's I don't like how bored I am. Maybe if I feel high, I won't be so bored. Or am I addicted to a feeling of hoarding, right? Knowing it's harmful, still doing it. What is the what do you think? Now, we're not completely, I don't think we know a fucking thing. You know what I mean? I'm only taking what I have learned in my experience and kind of having a discussion on it. What do you think the feeling of hoarding is? Like, what is the feeling that hoarders are addicted to?
Safety. You have possessions.
Safety within their possessions? Is that what you said?
Um,
Okay. So they feel safe within their possessions. Is it possible for an alcoholic to feel that way about alcohol?
Definitely is used to open the mind to relieve like stress or whatever you're dealing with. So I would say it's a survival tactic at times. So it's not necessarily you just to protect yourself from the outside things going on.
So let's say it is like a survival thing, right? What else do we need to survive? Well, we need food, water, shelter, air, sleep, sunlight, community. If you don't have water for 3 days, you die. No food for a couple weeks, you die. No air for 2 minutes, you die. What happens is alcoholics put alcohol. Alcohol gets added to that list. As a result of alcoholism, alcohol is added to that list. And we start to believe that if I don't have alcohol, I'm going to die. And perhaps that's fucking true, dude. So it gets to the point where we start like the same way, the person in North Korea is unable to defend themselves because they have to get food. We are unable to defend ourselves because we have to get alcohol. We're unable to defend the things that are right, that we believe. I'm used as maybe when I'm not drinking, I'm punctual. I'm on time. I'm here. I'm there. But when I'm drinking, I can't be on time. I have to do this before or that before, right? And then what happens as a result of that? My relationships become unmanageable. My career may become unmanageable. And I don't think anyone's a bad person. Again, I don't think like you're a bad person or have a moral deficiency. People who struggle with alcoholism or addiction, we have a disease, dude. Like anyone who would have drank and used the way we use would end up in these exact same situations. It's common, it's diagnosable, it's treatable. Now, how has your disease been active recently? So let's take a look at this, right? Maybe the disease of addiction is a combination of all of these things. So the disease of addiction is not just our alcoholism, perhaps it's our shopping, it's our smoking, it's our belief or perception on several areas of our lives, right? In what ways has your disease been active recently in this list? How many different ways? So how many of these addictions would you say you struggle with or have struggled with in the past?
Multiple.
I don't need to know which ones or whatever. Just throw a number out there.
I'd say for me, there's at least 7 that stand out that I know of at
7.
Yes.
6, is that what I heard? Anybody else? Now, 6 or 7, that's usually an average number. You know what I'm saying? Now, some of these things, like we'll use your phone, for instance. Gotta have your phone. Food. Take food. Food, for instance. Gotta have food. shopping, you're gonna have to shop, et cetera, et cetera. Some of these things, like you're gonna have to do, but there's also some of these things on here that you do not have to do or are most responsible for ruining or causing our lives to become unmanageable. Most people are not here to work on, their video game addiction primarily. Most people are not here to work on their sugar addiction primarily. Most people here don't eat mattresses. Like, to me, these are secondary addictions. Now,
is that really a thing? Mattresses? Somebody's eating mattress?
so, dude, like, it's on a show called My Strange Addiction. Now, you could go to the show My Strange Addiction, and they have like people who are. I'll just show you real quick. We'll go to YouTube real quick, and you can see.
I know a big one we left off. There's addiction to pornography.
Yeah, porn. I was thinking that as we were just looking at that list. So these people drink their own pee. That's disgusting. This woman's addicted to eating chocolate. This guy's sexually attracted to balloons. This woman drinks bleach. This woman eats her husband's ashes.
Like cremation ashes?
Yeah. This person eats toilet paper. Let's watch one of these real quick.
This game.
Let's watch. We're going to watch the ash
You're not
woman.
ready for it.
My name is Casey. I'm 26 years old. I'm from Fayetteville, Tennessee. And I'm addicted to carrying around my husband's urn. I take my husband everywhere. To the grocery store. Shopping. Ooh, babe, look at that. That's neat. To the movies. Out to eat. Anywhere I go, he goes. I sleep with him. I'm like, baby, I love you. When I go grocery shopping, I buy the foods that he likes. When I cook what he likes. I don't eat it, but I cook for him. If I'm watching TV, he's there with me. Do you want to watch this? If somebody says, hey, who is that? I'm like, that's just my husband. Some people laugh. They think I'm playing. But it's serious. It's my husband.
Casey and Sean were married in 2009 after dating for 10 months.
Everything I had ever wanted in a man was right in front of me. And it felt so great.
They fell in love and were soulmates from day one. The 2.5 years that they were together, I think, was the only time Casey was truly, truly happy.
Their marriage was picture perfect until Sean suffered a severe asthma attack 2 months ago.
The doctor came in, and the look on his face was telltale. It was the day my world stopped turning. The day my life fell apart.
Though Casey initially found comfort by having her husband's ashes at her side, her addiction has recently evolved.
I guess with the transfer of his cremains, some got into the cardboard box as well, and they spilled out on my hands. And I didn't want to wipe them off because that's my husband. I don't want to wipe him away. So I just licked it off my fingers, and here I am today, almost 2 months later, and I can't stop. I'm eating my
Even when she runs out.
First, I lick my finger, and I don't just dip it in. I swirl around to kind of feel and get it caked on there good. And then I just eat it.
Yo.
It tastes like
That's crazy.
rotten eggs, sand, and sandpaper. But I've grown to love that taste. It started as not wanting to get rid of him, and it's progressed into eating him. I've lost 42 pounds since my husband passed away. Basically, the only thing I'm eating are his ashes.
Casey eats her husband's ashes 5 to 6 times a day.
When I open up the urn, I get a sense of happiness. it's like an adrenaline rush for me. And the more I eat, the more excited I get until I realize there's not a lot left. Then a few minutes later, I feel horrible because I did it. When I got Sean back from the crematory, he weighed 6 pounds. He is closer to 5 pounds now, so I have consumed right at a pound. That's hard. I'm eating my husband.
Very few people know that Casey is eating her husband's ashes. She recently shared this secret with her mother.
When Casey actually told me that she was eating Sean's ashes, it was like I couldn't speak.
Yeah.
I really couldn't do anything. I mean, it's like I was just frozen there.
It makes me feel embarrassed, ashamed, disgusted with myself, confused, crazy. It's a big one that pops into my head. Gotta be a really sick person to eat someone's ashes.
That's how powerful addiction is. You so crazy like that if you're addicted to me.
I mean, dude, now, okay, let's talk about that real quick before we jump in any further. Her husband passed away 2 months ago. You know what I'm saying? She's probably in extreme amounts of grief, shock. You know, maybe, who knows, maybe every time she thinks about him, she's grief stricken, and that causes, you know what I mean? Maybe there is a feeling associated with the behavior. You follow me? Because, I mean, dude, if you, and again, why is this valuable information? Because maybe the same thing with our addiction. You know, I mean, maybe our addiction started 2 years ago when someone passed away, or a lot of people like COVID lost their job, some shit happened, and maybe that was where their disease of addiction began, or whatever the case may be. She wasn't eating ashes 2 months ago, you know, so, but I think it's important to look at that and just kind of look at all different diseases of addiction out there. Like, what can people actually be addicted to? And again, I don't know. Who knows? It could just be TV. She could be an actor for all we know. For all we know, what's in that urn is fucking it's sugar. You know what I mean? For all we know. But I mean, I don't know. I've seen people addicted to doing some weird shit in their day. They got some weird rituals and stuff like that. Now,
That's real. I mean, that's not that. I mean, that's a real situation. She's obviously can't accept the fact that he's gone, the fact she's acting like he's still there, she's talking to it, carrying around, going to the store. And then at one point, she might have felt like the first time she didn't want to waste anything that was on her finger. She did that. She might have had some weird psychological thing that she's literally becoming one with him. I don't know, something, that kind of feeling like she's so obsessed, like he's still there. That might have gave her that feeling that now inside me, he's literally with her, inside her.
yeah,
I'm just trying to figure that out.
Yeah, bro, I'm right there with you. And it's like, dude, she even, like, the same way, you know, people who struggle with addiction will often share about their withdrawals being alleviated on the way to get high or drunk. She was describing that same exact thing when she would open the urn. She gets an adrenaline rush. She gets that feeling. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, it's pretty fucking, and she's right. It is crazy, dude. You know? It is fucking crazy. You know what else is crazy? The amount of alcohol that we were drinking. That's fucking crazy, dude. When we look back, it's
normal people look at us and think that we're insane nuts because we are doing this, throwing everything away, killing ourselves. So yeah, I can see the correlation with normal people that can drink normally don't get why we do what we do. Well, we can't get what she's doing, what she does, except at the base level, normal addiction does.
Dude, and you know what, man? You're right. There's nothing that we could say to her or whatever. Unless the only thing that we could do is fucking eat some ash, bro. You know what I mean? You want to feel what she's feeling, you want to understand it. Fucking lick your finger, dip that motherfucker, and bring it back up and eat it and see if you get that same feeling. You know what? But we look at that and say, fuck no, dude. That's disgusting. Why would I ever do that? And it's like, yo, well, maybe you'd fucking like it. You know what I mean? Don't judge me if you're not gonna fucking try this. What's that?
I said that's scary. What if you did like it?
I know, right? It's the same thing with like alcoholism. It's like, motherfucker, you don't understand why I drink the way I do. But if you drank the way I did, maybe you'd understand. Maybe if you lived my life, you'd understand. You know what I mean? And we don't need other people to understand. We are the ones who have to understand. And the recovery process is the journey of understanding how my life has gotten the way it has as a result of addiction. And what that does is it gives us an opportunity to fix it and clean it up, get forgiveness from other people, you know, live the life we always wanted to live, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there are two parts to the disease of addiction. And we are going to define, now we're going to define addiction real quick. To be an addict. A person who's addicted, to be addicted. Here we go. Physically and mentally dependent on a substance, thing, or activity. So when you go to addicts, it's someone who's like addicted to substance, thing, or activities. That's why I put substance, thing, or activity. Physically and mentally dependent on a particular substance and unable to stop taking it without incurring adverse effects. Those adverse effects are probably withdrawal, something like that. Look at some similarities in addicted. It would be in the habit of, given to abusing, given to using, dependent on, obsessive. Now, physical dependence we call withdrawals. So when someone is going through physical dependence, they are typically experiencing physical independence from addiction. They're generally experiencing withdrawal symptoms. Now, if I'm physically dependent upon something, I'm not doing anything unless I do this first. Like, how can I say this? Me showering, getting ready, cooking for myself, getting ready for work. A lot of those physically demanding things may be dependent upon me consuming a drink or a drug first. And I mean, go back to what it is that we're, I mean, maybe it's just caffeine. Maybe it's just nicotine. Maybe it's marijuana or some fucking pill that people can't really get on with their day unless they ingest this substance. Or maybe they can get on with their day, but if they don't, they're going to get some adverse effects like withdrawal symptoms or something like that. So when it comes to withdrawal symptoms, that only accounts for, let's say you want to be sober for 1 year, 1 year sobriety. That is like the big thing. Okay, well, usually 1 year sobriety is something that people want. 1 year. In that 1 year, to get over the physical withdrawals, you're going to be looking at, on average, 2 weeks of recovery, okay, which accounts for 4% of 1 year sober. The mental obsession is the other 50 weeks, and that goes up as time goes on, and that accounts for 96% of 1 year sober. So a lot of people are worried about withdrawals and everything like that, when you don't need to be worried about withdrawals. Withdrawals are not what is mostly after we get sober for 2 weeks, like where we are right now in our recovery. Physical withdrawals aren't really a part of our everyday recovery journey. The mental obsession, the idea, battling the idea that it is okay to get high. is the problem that we are trying to work on right now. And that is the battle for 96 to 100% of all recovery. Me working on battling the idea that it's a good idea to actually get high. Now, this part is called withdrawals, physical withdrawals. This part is called obsession. Obsession is to preoccupy or fill the mind continually, intrusively, and to a troubling extent. So what happens is, and this is just how addiction works. This is what happens. We're going to start to become obsessed over drugs and alcohol, obsessed over getting high. And that is an indicator that, whoa, I want to get high right now. This is where I need to input some sort of recovery or whatever the case may be. This obsession, who knows how long? Like, how long does it last? I don't know. Early on, it may seem like it's lasting forever. Some people early on, your obsession may be super intense because it's paired with physical withdrawal. So we may start to believe that it's a good idea to get high just to alleviate the physical withdrawals, when the truth is the feeling of physical withdrawals is actually good. When our addiction is what causes us to perceive it as bad, when the reality is the physical addiction is actually good. So how long is this going to last? I don't know. Hours, days, weeks. I do know that as time goes on, the obsession decreases. So I can't give you a specific time rate on how long this takes. Probably after you get through physical withdrawals, the obsession begins to alleviate. So I would say maybe 2 weeks. For me, it took about a month before my obsession began to subside. But as you remain in recovery, that obsession begins to decrease. But there is no telling when it's going to occur. That's what makes it intrusive. It's just going to show up randomly and maybe stay there for a couple hours. And when you got something, doesn't matter if it's family intruding on you, you don't get to choose. I mean, you can kick them out if you want, but they're intruding, so you may not shower or go to work or, go about things the same way, with an obsession to use, a strong desire to use, intruding in your brain. And there's no telling what's going to happen. Maybe you're just sitting there hanging out, eating dinner, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I want to get high right now. Why do I want to get fucking high right now? That's weird. And that is your disease of addiction and your brain trying to rewire itself. And what is required in that moment is sobriety, because most of the time in active addiction, when we feel this way, we go get high. This obsession becomes so intrusive and continual that it is troubling. I'm unable to continue working or hanging out here unless I solve it. And the only way I know how to solve my obsession with this feeling I have is through getting high. And what it means to be in recovery is 100% of the time that I have this, I respond with sobriety. It means that 100% of the time that I am battling, should I to get high or to not get high? That is the question. As I battle this, every time I battle it, the answer is going to be stay sober. And why? Because the answer that I've had previously, which was, yeah, go ahead, get high, ultimately got me to this place that I am today. Woo! Hell yeah, folks. Great job so far. We have gotten to a point where we're going to take a break. We're going to take a break until about 2:30. And when you come back, we're going to continue on to understand obsession. What have I been obsessed with lately? How does that remove me from my responsibilities and things I have to do? And maybe get into a little bit of denial. So take a 20-minute break, come back at 2:30, and we're going to keep on moving and grooving. Heck yeah.